Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new, very special episode of Uncanny Treks. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Last week, we finished up the Paul Dini, Destin Wynn run on Detective Comics. We had a cameo from Slam Bradley, and Bob was like, "This is the perfect time to force Matt to read a Slam Bradley comic I've been meaning to make him read." So we are doing Gotham Year One. It is written by Tom King. It is art by Phil Hester. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great, Bob. The only thing I regret is that Slam Bradley was never on the Batman 66 show, so we could see Slam in the big letters.
Oh man, that would be great. Oh man, they really should. They had that long running Batman 66 comic.
Yes.
They really should have at least done like a couple Slam Bradley issues of that Batman 66 comic. That would have been delightful.
In case you're wondering what I'm talking about, folks, when Slam Bradley hits people in these comics, it says Slam every time.
It's great. It's great. So Matt, to begin with, Tom King, he's a controversial figure. I know one of our most devoted listeners absolutely hates him. But Matt, what's your take on Tom King?
Little controversial there, isn't he? Yeah. Well, Bob, I will say that I've read a lot of Tom King. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is his best book, and it's like the definitive Kara Zor-El story. Like if you were going to say, hey, if you need to read a Supergirl story, what should I read? That's the one, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's great. Read it now, listeners, before the 2026 movie adapts it and ruins it. Read it now.
Right. But then Bobby's got the other side to the Tom King coin, Heroes in Crisis, which is absolutely terrible. And
it's almost as bad as Identity Crisis, folks.
Almost, yes.
Almost. It's one, and in fairness, I think he kind of had to do it because they were like, Tom King, it's your turn to write a crossover. But it's real bad. It's real bad.
So if we have Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow as his best, and we have Heroes in Crisis as one of his worst, if you want to look for a mediocre Tom King, Batman Elmer Fudd.
I strong disagree there. I would say Batman and Elmer Fudd is, I would say, good or even very good. It is not mediocre.
It's average. City of Bane.
It is shockingly good. You say the words Batman Elmer Fudd. We need to do an episode on it. You say
I've read it recently, Bob. I'll do it with you. I'll do an episode of it. I enjoyed it, but to me it was just it was average. It was what it was. It's not the.
All right. Well, we'll save that argument for the episode.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying, I mean, if you're listening and you're on the fence about reading it, read it. But it's not,
Well, can I tell you what my midpoint Tom King title is?
Go for it, Bob.
I agree with you, Supergirl, probably number one, if not number one, near number one of Tom King. Heroes in Crisis, absolute dog crap. I would say the one that still flummoxes me is his Mr. Terrific and Adam Strange one, which actually maybe we should do that too because of the Superman movie with Mr. Terrific coming up. But that comic, I honestly don't know if it's a really great comic or if it's one of the worst comics I've ever read. I do not know. And so I want to do an episode with you and discuss it with you and see how I feel about it after that.
Well, Bob, I do know your opinion of Tom King's Killing Time, which you don't care for, but I think it's awesome.
I don't care for it. I will say I do appreciate that it does Long Halloween, but in 6 issues rather than 13. I appreciate the brevity. I'm into the whole brevity thing.
And then Bob, he did City of Bane, which strangely I preferred part 2 over part 1 because Tom King typically, he's very strong coming in, but then he doesn't hit the landing.
Yeah. Although I think of that as more of a Scott Snyder problem than a Tom King problem. Although it's also just generally a comics writer problem because of the nature of the medium.
Exactly, yeah. And I've read most of his Bat-Cat stuff, but I'm not as recently, so I'm not as fresh on it. But I remember finding it kind of meh. It wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, I do want to argue with you about Killing Time at some point, although I'm not in as much of a hurry. And then I also want to see what you think of the Chip Zdarsky, or not Chip Zdarsky, the Tom King Penguin series, which ties into Chip Zdarsky's Batman and is sort of a sequel to Killing Time, and I thought was absolutely horrible, but I wonder if you might like the Penguin comic more since it's tied into Killing Time. Maybe you'll think it's horrible.
Maybe. I don't know. I have to check it out. But that's my exposure to Tom King, Bob. And I feel like I've read most of his stuff that's, like you sound like you've read some of the more niche stuff like Adam Strange, Mr. Terrific. I've read some of the mainstream crap, mainly.
I think I've read everything Tom King has written for Marvel and DC. I haven't read his Love Everlasting series for Image, but I think I've read everything he's written for Marvel or DC.
Well, Bob, on the art side though, we got someone different here.
Yeah, we got Phil Hester, Matt. Do you remember his art?
Yeah, he was on Green Arrow. Didn't he draw Winnick's Green Arrow?
He actually drew basically maybe I think they were fill-ins, but I think he basically drew the first 50, 60 issues of that Green Arrow series. So he was on the Kevin Smith run, he was on the Brad Meltzer run, he was on the Judd Winnick run. He's like the source of continuity.
The Winnick run was the Riddler thing, right?
I don't
I think
think the
so. Oh well.
maybe that was the one where they do 1 year later, where Ollie's the mayor of Star City, where
Correct.
Rick is a big
I feel like that
villain.
was Winnick. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I do remember Kevin Smith's run though, and that the what defines his art, the jaw lines. He gives that square line is what gives his art away.
Yeah, yeah, and
It's
like you said
somewhat
in the notes.
yeah,
Oh, go
somewhat
ahead.
similar to Tim. Yeah, it's somewhat similar to Tim's look.
Yeah,
Bruce
it
Tim.
does kind of have a Batman the animated series look to it for sure. I think Phil Hester also did the art for Mark Millar's Swamp Thing,
Mm,
which is just very weird because that's supposed to be a very good run. I've never read it, but it just kind of funny to imagine this kind of Bruce Timm style on a Vertigo comic, on a Swamp Thing horror comic. It's kind of funny to imagine.
yeah.
Well, Matt, were you surprised that our comic here for today, the 6 issues of Gotham Year One, were you surprised that it was set in the early 60s? Usually, when you use Slam Bradley as a character and you kind of go back to the roots of Batman, you think film noir, you think 1930s, 1940s, but here we're doing early 60s.
All right, Bob. I didn't really understand why it was early '60s because I'm struggling to understand the timeline primarily because I know that Slam Bradley had a relationship with Catwoman. Is this
Well,
non-canonical?
clearly, I don't, Matt, I don't understand the new DC universe, but clearly that can't. Like, either this is out of continuity or the Catwoman Slam Bradley thing no longer happened. One or the
Gotcha.
other.
I just want that Slam Bradley Catwoman thing to happen, Bob.
I mean, I
I'm
like
kidding.
that I like that romance a lot, but yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that Catwoman series after the New 52, I don't know if it would quote count anymore.
Right. Especially with the
Which is
with the black mask stuff too. I'm like, mm, especially with the way he's
yeah,
characterized now.
and I don't know like I don't know where Holly's at as a character
Good point.
anymore
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I say, I wish that stuff still counted in the sense that I really like that Catwoman series, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just feel like they said in the early '60s so they could kind of try to make this fit in a timeline.
But they're not because like with where Slam's age at the end with Batman, like there's no way he was ever in a romance with Catwoman.
Oh yeah, I agree. Oh, I know, but I mean, unless he's really old, I mean, he'd have to be in his like '60s, '70s. I
Well,
mean,
Matt,
I'm just saying that's why it's weird. That's why it's also not
what
set in
go,
the 30s or 40s because then it would be way too crazy.
what goes down in issue number 1 at Gotham Year One, Matt?
Well, Bob, Slam Bradley is given a letter to deliver related to the recent disappearance of Gotham's princess, Helen Wayne, who is Bruce's great aunt.
She's just Bruce's aunt, I think.
No, because Constance has. Wait a minute. Constance gives birth to Thomas, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
great
and
aunt.
she gives birth
Constance would
to
be.
Helen.
Yeah,
Is
so
it
that would be. Because Thomas would be Helen.
Thomas
Oh
is
yeah,
Helen's
you're right,
son?
aunt. You're right, aunt. Damn it. I'm getting too much time here. Yes, you're right, Bob. Just the aunt. Just the auntie.
Just the auntie. Just you didn't know Batman had an aunt, although
Yeah.
as you find out, actually he doesn't have an aunt.
Aunt Harriet, Bob.
Aunt Harry. Oh, although she supposed to be Dick's aunt,
I
right?
don't have I don't have a
Bruce's.
clue, Bob. I don't know. There's just some woman living up in Wayne Manor. I didn't understand it. I thought that was just
Yeah.
so they could be like, okay, there's a woman living there. They're not all gay.
That is why they did it.
So I'm not even really gonna justify it. Like I know why that woman was there.
She was there to police it. Well, Matt, what goes down on your favorite panel of
Well, Bob,
issue
my
two?
favorite panel is actually on page one. There's this newspaper that gives you the damn setting. I love it when they do that. They say this is 1961, and you know what the story setup is because you're like, oh, here's the family. This kid is missing. It's a Wayne. We're set in Gotham. I just thought it was a great way to quickly stage the story, and this is so similar to the crime of the century, Bob.
Yeah. So, like Matt's saying, it's very similar to the Lindenberg kidnapping. Matt, you wanna catch our listeners up
Yeah.
on what the Lindenberg kidnapping was if they don't know?
So the famous pilot Charles Lindbergh's baby was kidnapped, and a ransom note was sent out, but then the baby was found dead like 2 months later. And that's pretty much the plot of the story. I mean, with just involving the Waynes and Slam
Although
Bradley.
I think some conspiracy theorists say that wasn't actually the baby,
Oh,
but
okay.
I think that's more the realm of conspiracy theory.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're interested in it, there actually is a pretty good comic. There's a guy named Richard Geary who does like black and white true crime graphic novels about famous 19th and 20th century murder cases, and he has one about the Lindbergh baby kidnapping that's pretty good.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I like Gary.
I feel like true crime comics need to come back.
Yeah. Matt Lex is from hell. So that was your favorite panel. I guess I wanted to start by asking you any thoughts. You know, we've kind of emphasized this, but any thoughts on the Wayne family names? We figure out that Bruce's grandfather is Richard Bruce. We figure out that his grandmother is Constance, and we figure out that his aunt is Helen Wayne.
Okay, so like Richard made me immediately think of Grayson, so that just stuck. I don't know why. And then
Which
Constance,
is funny. I just wanted to point out it's funny because we just read that Devin Grayson Gotham Knights arc where you have like the ghost of Batman's parents arguing with the ghost of Nightwing's parents, and
right?
Batman's parents are being like really racist, really anti-Romani to Nightwing's parents, and so it's funny that Batman's grandfather would have the same name as Nightwing's father.
And what's so strange too is technically Dick has been adopted by Bruce, so it's like it's
Oh
the same.
yeah,
It's really it could be the same name if you wanted to be it that way. All right,
but it's not because that's interesting. Yeah, good point.
Dick
Good
Wayne.
point.
All right,
Dick Wayne.
and then but then Helen Wayne, Bob. We know Helena was the huntress in the Silver Age,
Yeah.
so is she supposed to be named after
I
uh,
guess so. I guess
Dead
so.
Aunt Helen?
And we know from the Bat Cat series that Matt didn't love that Tom King has a lot of time for Helena Wayne as Batman and the Catwoman's daughter, right? So yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting angle to it. Yeah. Well, Matt, I did want to say, were you a little surprised that the kidnapper's letter had a bat mark there at the end?
Oh my, it was a bit too on the nose, Bob, and you're going to see that throughout this comic. And I get it's called Gotham City Year One, so we're going to be learning about like how this came to be and how this came to be. But it's like it's so damn on the nose.
Yeah. Well, and as an aside, I would just say my favorite panel was, and this is something that I go to a lot in Batman comics, it turns out, but we see two creepy gate statues in front of the Wayne Manor that look very much like the statues you might see in Mask of the Phantasm. And so I always like a creepy statue in a Batman comic. So
I didn't
that's
care
my
for.
favorite panel.
I'm glad you like this as your favorite panel because I didn't care for Wayne Manor's architecture for some reason. It looked like a community college. But like it didn't fit the time. I always imagined during the 60s it would look more like an estate and not so much with all these like paneled windows.
I'd have to go back and look at the architecture. I was more fixated on the statues by the gate, I
Yeah.
have to say. And then, Matt, we've already referenced this, but we have the reveal at the end of this issue that it's Slam Bradley telling this story to Batman about his grandparents and his dead aunt. And were you surprised that that's the revelation of Slam telling this to young Batman? Or maybe not young Batman, but just to Batman?
I mean, they had to include him somehow, Bob. Research shows that comics set in Gotham City tend to sell better when Batman does make an appearance.
This is true, Matt. This is true. So going on to issue number 2, Matt, what goes down in issue number 2 of Gotham Year One?
So, as the GCPD tries to put the kidnapping on Slam, he tries to meet with the kidnappers to exchange the ransom money.
Matt, do you like the irony in this issue that Gotham is bigger yet safer than Metropolis in the early 1960s?
I do, Bob, especially with the hard-nosed commissioner who's only had to solve 6 murders in a calendar year.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's Green Lantern, Bob?
Oh, that's a good point. Well, actually, isn't it in New
Third.
52? No, in New 52, they're a different Earth, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right. No Green
Earth
Lantern.
2. They're back. They're
Yeah.
back to Earth 2. So
Yeah,
yeah, no Green
yeah.
Lantern anymore.
Oh, man. Well, dag. That was going to be
Well,
fun.
yeah. Sorry, Matt. Sorry. But I mean, you could also say he would still be 40s, right? So he's retired by this point, and maybe he's one of the reasons Gotham is so safe.
What I heard, Bob, is he was in Metropolis.
Oh, that's just a visit, Matt. That's just a visit. Hush, establish that. Hush,
Yeah.
establish that. So my favorite panel this issue is we see Batman's granddad pointing the white outline of a revolver at Slam, and Slam is bathed in red light. I thought that was a very cool page of art by Phil Hester.
I did think that was really cool. The artwork in this is fantastic. Like, I love the art in this. I mean, it's just it's gritty. but it's on the mark. I love it.
Yeah, man. One thing you got to say about Tom King comics is whatever you think about the writing, and for me, they're way up, way down. My man gets great artists. Like his artists are always great. I did want to also point out something. I guess I should have put this in the notes, but I didn't. But there's an interesting I'm not saying, I'm not really criticizing. I just think it's interesting that this comic likes to present characters and then not give their names or really withhold their names. So they give the hard-nosed police commissioner that Matt just described, but I don't think we actually learn his name until like a newspaper story at the very end of this miniseries, and I can't even remember what it is. So it's a very kind of an aside. And then
it actually, Bob, that's a good point you just made there, because I was when I was picking my favorite panel, I was looking for his name and could not find it. So I just called him Commissioner.
Yeah, they do say it, I think, in the reporting on it, on him getting beaten up in what will be Crime Alley. We'll get to that.
And also the woman you're about to describe, who is the messenger who delivers the letter. She calls herself Sue at one point, but I think that's all we only hear at one time.
Yeah, she calls herself Sue, and then later, much later after this issue, Slam Bradley figures out her name is Queenie.
Mm-hmm.
But for large swaths of the issue, she's just not called anything, and you kind of assume Sue is just a fake name she gives Slam.
But even Queenie sounds like a stage name for her jazz stuff. Exactly. So I'm just like, you don't really know her name. You don't. I mean.
And she seems to be Queenie seems to be somewhat modeled on like a 1960s Eartha Kitt Catwoman. Not totally, but she's African American, like Eartha Kitt. She's a little bit of a stage dancer, stage performer, which I think Eartha Kitt also was. So there seems to be some influence there.
And she also jumps from buildings, Bob.
Yeah.
Like Catwoman.
Catwoman leaps. Yep.
So on the damn nose. That was when I was like, those moments made me cringe a little bit. So I'm like, really, do we need a Catwoman character here? Because the only thing I know about Slam Bradley is that he slammed Catwoman. So I'm just like...
Well, it's interesting because there's like two ways that you can go with a prequel, right? You can literally say like, oh, this is why this thing is this way. Or you can just have things that are broadly similar to current stories but just happen in the past.
Yeah, which is what they do here. I mean, it's...
Well, they do a little bit of both. Like, they explain why some things are this way, but they also just have things like, as far as I can tell, we're not supposed to understand that, like, this character, Queenie, has any, like, direct influence on, why things are the way they are in current Batman. She's just a character who's an interesting parallel to Catwoman.
Right. Which is also, but interesting here enough, Bob, you notice some Court of Owls type stuff, which goes into the mythos.
Yeah, and so that's the other big foreshadowing is we have what seems to be a Court of Owls owl on the grave of what would be Batman's great-grandparents, Richard's parents, John and Mildred. And then I can't remember if this is this issue or a later issue, but you brought up another connection. That's heavy Court of Owls. Yeah,
the baby Helen has an owl on her blanket, which is just a weird choice.
And it gets really emphasized in some of the later issues, too.
Right. Yeah, you see it in several different panels with this blanket. It's crazy. But I will say, Bob, my favorite panel though was part of that. I like that panel with Richard slumped into the grave marker, just as foreshadowing. I like that. And then you do see, like you said, the owl, which means he was tied to the Court of Owls somehow.
Yeah. What goes down in issue number 3, Matt?
So Slam hunts down the woman who took the ransom, which leads him to a grave where he finds the body of Helen Wayne.
Yeah. And then my favorite panel was early in this issue. We see a flashback of why Slam is no longer a Gotham cop. And we see a pretty horrific scene where a white detective accidentally shoots a black guy's hand as a part of an intimidation strategy in an interrogation, and then Slam Bradley just sees red, and specifically in this red colored flashback, we see Slam headbutting the detective. It was a really great panel.
Well, Bob, we do find out something about Batman's granddad, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, do you find this as funny as I do, Matt, that Batman's granddad is a racist wife beater?
I mean, it was 1961. I don't know if do you know much about your own great granddad? If they were racist or awful, I don't know.
I
know my granddad, but I don't know my great granddad. So I'm like,
I know a couple things, but I'd rather not get into
Yeah,
it.
and that's how I'm too, Bob. Like I know a couple of things, but they're not like bad. I mean, it's not like the worst thing ever, but it's like okay, the time, it's awful. Yeah, it's not. We don't want to be like that anymore. Of course, one thing we do find out, Bob, about the Waynes, though, which was interesting to me, is that uh, Constance actually held the purse strings, and that he was not the one who was, the breadwinner or the one who brought in all the money. He'd like wasted their fortune.
Yeah, I don't think we find out what Constance's maiden name is. I don't think, but the implication is at this point, or not the implication. I think it's said in not this issue, but a later issue, that at this point the quote unquote Wayne Enterprises is running off of her money, not
Her
their
inheritance,
money.
yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
So it's not actually the Wayne money technically. Like that was weird to me. That was interesting to me.
yeah. And then, did you catch how they have like and there's a association of like talking clowns with
Yes.
Slam's grandmother, and to me that seems very much like a nod to in the Flashpoint universe, Martha Wayne is the Joker, right?
Oh,
Like
it totally was.
Yeah, it's obviously that's like a broad parallel, right? I don't think there's a literal connection. But
No.
I think it is definitely what King and Hester were going for. In
It
this
was a
series.
wink and nod type thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And speaking of reveals, Matt, we get a big reveal about Slam's mother.
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating to me because there's a lot of like such a lot there's a ton of racial tension in this comic, okay? Because it is 1961. You're in America. You're in a city setting, and we haven't really talked too much about this, but part of what Richard wants to do is build this chemical plant in southern Gotham. And in order to do it, he's going to have to, I guess, move a lot of people, or people don't want him building down there. They don't
And
want
there's
it.
going to be a lot of environmental pollution.
Right, environmental pollution, and this is a poorer part of the town.
Yeah, and so they really do like north is like rich white side of town,
South
poor
is not,
black
yes.
side. Yeah,
But Wayne is moving into South Gotham to set up industry, trying to act like he's going to help the people, but in reality, we find out that's not actually the case.
and there's like an interesting scene where he's being very racist, not to Slam, but like with Slam, where he's like, "Oh, Slam, you work on the South Side. You seem to know these, basically he says like colored folks or something to that effect,
Right.
right?" He's like, "Hey, can you help me kind of not have problems with them?" And so it's a little bit of interesting foreshadowing of what you're about to get to.
Right, and it's interesting. And you find out that Slam's mom is actually black, so he's meant to be mixed. And we find out from his backstory that his brother was murdered by the local priest at the local precinct, and in order to infiltrate that precinct to figure out what happened, Slam joins the police force. But when he gets the application, he can either put white or black, and in his mind, he put white because he knew that would get him on the force. So there's that piece. It's just like there's so much like racial drama, tension.
Yeah, which is really, really interesting to have Slam be, a black guy or a mixed race guy who's passing as white. And then it's also especially ironic because, Matt, have you ever read the first Slam Bradley story in Detective Comics #1?
No, I never have.
It's super, super racist.
Oh,
It's like Slam Bradley beating up a bunch of very racistly drawn Chinese guys. It's like
oh,
super racist, and so there's a really interesting irony. I know Tom King has read it. I think that's the only only Golden Age Slam Bradley story I've read, and that's the one most people have read if they've read one. So I know Tom King has read some of those, and so I think he was very conscious of as cool as Slam Bradley is as a character, and I agree. I think he's a great, cool character. He does have this really racist history, and so this is a kind of interesting way to repackage that by having him be a mixed race guy passing as white.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's cool. I did not know that at all. That I have is so. This is kind of a strange question, but you said he was racist towards Asian people and the Chinese. So this character is not going to be racist towards Chinese, is he, Bob? Like that's like
Yeah,
how weird would that be if the modern Slam Bradley was racist to Chinese people, even though they went through all the trouble of building up this backstory to make him not racist towards black people?
Yeah, I agree. There's a funny irony or a funny tension there, and I think it's also just worth pointing out too that it's interesting that people love to complain about like race swapping today, right? But we have this kind of classic example in the '60s of Catwoman gets quote unquote race swapped. She's played by two white actresses, Julie Newmar and Lee Merriweather, but she's also played by a black actress in Batman 66, Eartha Kitt, and nobody complains about that. And so it's very interesting that this comic that's kind of dealing with hiding racial identity or passing mutability of racial identity also does have this callback to Black Catwoman, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
although it's not made a huge thing of, it's also interesting that, yeah, like you were saying, Matt, the thing everybody knows Slam Bradley for today is that in the late aughts, early teens, I think more late aughts, he had a romance with Catwoman, right? And so yeah, that's really interesting too. That's kind of in the mix of references that this comic is
Right.
doing.
Yeah. I feel like he went kind of deep with these with the character. Well, Bob, my favorite panel in this issue is when Slam finds this crying baby. All right. After going
There's
to
a
a
really
house,
great
yes.
breakdown here, right?
After going to a house that it's supposed to be Sue's home, or not Sue, what do we, Queenie's home. It's supposed to be where she's living with her brother. He knocks on the door. He hears a
And he
crying
hears a baby
baby.
crying.
He
Yeah.
thinks it's the princess of Gotham, and he busts in there, beats the crap out of the dude, goes upstairs, gets shot at a couple of times, goes in and finds that it's not the princess of Gotham, but obviously probably the daughter
And
of
it's
this
this
guy
really
he just beat the crap out of.
and it's a really interesting fake out because the baby and the guy that Slam beats the crap out of are black, and so
Yes.
Slam's first thought is oh god, I'm becoming the racist cop that I wanted to not be, right?
Right.
But then what happens, Matt?
Well, then Bob he looks out the window and he sees that in the grass there's a shallow grave, and yeah, goes and digs it up, and who does he find but the princess of Gotham, Helen Wayne, dead,
R.I.P.
buried.
Batman's aunt, baby.
Yes.
She's never going to grow up to be Aunt Harriet.
So she was buried there at that home. We don't know by who,
Yeah, yeah,
and we don't know why
yeah,
at this point.
yeah. Very, very macabre. Very macabre. Well, Matt, what goes down in issue number 4?
Well, Slam confronts Richard Wayne. He bangs Constance Wayne, and he beats the tar out of the commissioner in the yet-to-be-named crime alley. And Bob censored
Matt,
my language.
I just feel like it's okay if we get the explicit tag, but we don't always have to
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
explicit tag.
It's okay, Bob. It's okay. I need to learn to censor myself.
Did you like in this issue you saw Batman's granddad, Richard Bruce, has a menagerie of taxidermied animals? Did you like his collection?
It's quite creepy, but the hippopotamus sticks out because it looks so cartoonish. To me, it's like it doesn't even look like a real hippo.
Does, yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Matt, did you pick up from this issue that Slam might be Batman's real granddad?
I mean, he could be. Which is that part of this year one in Gotham? Because does that also make Batman
so.
Does that make Batman 1/4 black
It would be a lot less.
or 1/16?
Well, yeah, because it would be something more like 1/16. And I mean, that's not. Yeah, I mean that's how we do it casually, but that's not.
I know, Bob. I know it's not
how
a.
it works.
I know, Bob. It's not scientific. You're absolutely right. Yes, I understand.
I just want to be clear because it's one of those weird things that there's the way society talks about it. It so easily does slide into just being like weird racism and weird like one drop rule stuff, right?
Exactly. Yes. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Not saying you were doing that.
I know what
I
you
don't
mean.
want
though. I know.
listeners to be
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah. Don't get
But
confused.
yeah,
with this.
it is something that the comic doesn't really go into, but I do think it is meant to leave open this suggestion that Slam might actually be Bruce's granddad. Since I mean, there's nothing that would forbid you from thinking that Richard knocked Constance up before, spoilers, he dies later in this comic, but they don't have a close relationship. I mean, you could also just read it as like Constance is opportunist and she gets somebody to make her pregnant, right? Like it doesn't necessarily even have to be Slam, but it is interesting that it introduces this ambiguity into Batman's ancestry. And, just to make a point, I don't know if you followed this news coverage about the most recent Pope, Matt, but his family moved from New Orleans to Chicago, and in New Orleans they were Creoles, which means they were thought of as black, and then they moved to Chicago and they just started identifying as white.
Oh, okay. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
normal?
So he's like a
Is that
yeah.
like
No, it's,
you
I mean,
just leave? Okay, I didn't know. Okay, I didn't know. It's just
yeah.
like,
It's very well, especially if you have like light skin. It's
oh,
very
okay.
common for
So,
people to cross the color line, especially in segregated America, and just say,
oh,
yeah, no, I'm white, and just not think anything more about it.
yeah, I had no idea that the new pope identified as Kirill when he was younger. That's interesting.
Well, he did. It's like his grandparents,
Or
I
Grant,
think.
excuse me, yeah,
Like his yeah, it's like his grandparents or his great grandparents were like Creoles of color in New Orleans, but they when they moved to Chicago, they started identifying in the census as white.
oh, okay, gotcha. Well, Bob, in this issue, did you have a favorite panel?
Yeah, yeah. I did like. There's a kind of there's the famous scene in Batman Year One where Gordon beats Lieutenant Flass, I think it is, with
Correct.
the
Yes.
bat. And here we have a good inversion of that, where it's Slam Bradley beating the commissioner of police with a bat. Yeah, making Slam the real Batman.
Yeah, that
And
was my absolute
another.
favorite scene. Like that was awesome. That part, the way it was drawn, that was my favorite panel as well.
Well, then the other interesting thing I wanted to call out is that Constance, Batman's grandmother, is talking about Richard wanting to build a Wayne chemical cathedral
Uh huh.
in South Gotham, which I thought was an interesting Batman '89 reference. It's both interesting because we're going to see the stuff with Ace Chemical later in this series,
Right.
and also the famous role of the cathedral in Batman '89. So it was interesting that this miniseries was putting itself so much in conversation with Batman '89.
Yeah, when I read that line, Bob, I did not put that together. But yeah, you're absolutely right because I read it and it sounded so stupid to me. Wayne Chemical Cathedral. What the hell is she talking about? But you're right. It does sound like they're implying, yeah, that okay. He was making sort of an
Yeah,
'89
yeah.
reference. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and it's sort of in '89. It's sort of just like a metaphor, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Just
get
to be
it.
clear for the,
It,
just to be
it,
clear for the, it's like
it,
it's a monument to his wealth or monument to the Wayne
yeah, but
family.
it wasn't really meant to
Yeah,
be. I think an intentional reference to '89, but we're doing that because it sounded so odd to me. I think that's how I like to say it. I'll just say it's a reference. I like that.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right,
That's fun. That's fun.
issue number
What goes
five,
down in
Bob.
issue number five?
All right, issue number five, Bob. Slam learns that Johnny, his former employee, was killed by Richard Wayne after he confronted his lover Sue about her involvement with the kidnapping of Helen.
Matt, have you ever seen the movie The Maltese Falcon?
I have not. No, probably need to.
Oh, you should. It's a really great Humphrey Bogart movie, and it's about Humphrey Bogart investigating the murder of his partner, who's an absolute scumbag. And the scene where Johnny gets the tables turned on him by Sue and eventually Richard is not exactly the same, but pretty similar to what happens to Bogart's partner in the Maltese Falcon. Sorry, spoilers. And it is also just an interesting callback of, on the one hand, we see Sam be so affectionate towards Johnny, relatively speaking, but then, yeah, we have Johnny just be such an absolute garbage bag.
Yeah, yeah. Johnny's trash.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and
So
that's
the
further
panel
and
where
that's
we go.
further reiterated by Slam later on when he doesn't even shed a tear for Johnny's death, even though Johnny had been his employee for how many years? He said like for at least
Yeah,
10.
10 years,
Yeah.
20 years, yeah. Yeah. And my favorite panel of the issue, emphasizing Johnny is trash, Matt, is Batman's granddad Richard and Queenie kissing on top of a dirt mound over Johnny's body.
Well, but my favorite panel comes later in the issue when Slam throws the Wayne's private security guy out of the window of his home. He lands on top of Slam's car, and then Slam proceeds to drive the car around town with the guy on top of the car and takes him to like a junkyard. That whole sequence of panels was just awesome. Very well drawn action sequences.
Nice, nice. And Matt mentions in his notes that they go down Jansen Avenue, which is the thing that Tom King always does in his Batman comics. Is every street is named after a Batman writer or artist, and so that I guess is the references we could be spilling out for these.
Oh my
But
god, it would
I
go
don't
on
know.
forever.
There's so much of it.
There's
Yeah,
one
it's
issue
forever.
where Slam's like telling you every single turn he's making on every single road, and there's like 20 different Batman author like writers that are mentioned. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you you
writers
you,
and
you,
artists. Yeah.
you have fun with that. You enjoy that if anybody goes back and reads through that. All right,
All right, Matt,
Bob.
what goes down in the final issue?
In this final issue, Bob, we discover the baby's death was an accident, that Helen murders Richard, and that Sue leaves Gotham.
I say it again because it's Constance. Sorry.
Oh
I
yeah, that's
stopped
right.
it.
All right, Bob. So we discover the baby's death was an accident, that Constant murders Richard, and that Sue leaves Gotham.
Yeah, and my favorite panel is relatively early on, and in the kind of for her over the death of Helen Wayne, the Princess of Gotham, on the South Side. There's a race riot where the whites from the North are burning down parts of South Gotham, the black side of town, and a part of that is we see a neon jazz sign burning, which I thought was a very cool visual image.
Well, Bob, we learned the
And I wanted
origin.
to ask Matt. Oh yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Bob, we learned the origins of this is Gotham City Year One, so we of course we need to learn some origins, some other things. We learned the origin of the Batcave, Bob.
Yeah, Matt, did you like that the Batcave originated as Batman's granddad's sex trophy room?
No, Bob, I did not like that. In fact, it really made me not like the Batcave anymore and not want to even think about the Batcave for a long time.
But it doesn't really enrich your sense of like his trophy room of like the T-Rex statue and the dead Robin costumes and the villain's mask and the
Yeah.
giant penny and the freeze gun. You don't like that knowing that the origin of that was it was Batman's grandfather was hanging up a bunch of pairs of panties from women he may have sexually coerced.
Yeah, and he was apparently jacking off too, Bob.
Yeah, yeah.
According to Constance Wayne.
It adds a certain something. Like you
Yeah,
think about that.
yeah.
We really like that Hush fight in the Batcave
Yeah.
from last week, Matt. You think about that, but what was going down 80 years before? Well, Batman's granddad was taking women down there and having his way.
Having his
It
way
just
with
adds a
having
certain
his
something.
having his way with the servants, having his way with people that just then taking their pictures, putting their panties
I
in his
mean,
face, sniffing them.
it is grim, and we are making light of it. But I do kind of appreciate it on the level of usually people portray the Waynes as like such a noble, great family, and their legacy means so much to Gotham. Although I know recently with like the Court of Owls, and recently with like that game, the name of which escapes me, the Squaresoft or whatever. I know recently people have been troubling that, but I do just like making the Waynes scumbags. I find that refreshing.
What do you about when remember when Azrael and Jean Paul they crawl through the Batcave to get to the part where she obviously fell down that hole that they end up
Yeah,
unveiling to like the light shines down. You know what I'm talking about with Azrael and the reveal and Nightfall
Yeah.
or Night's End? Yeah.
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 I
You
remember
think when they were crawling through there and Azrael was having to take off his armor, he was like walking through like porn, like
Yeah.
like he was like pushing aside panties and stuff to get there. Like he's
I like to think that Azrael like found some of the panties and was like wearing them as a part of his Asbat outfit. I like to imagine that.
What we should do is go back and get that image where like you see Azrael still wearing the helmet and he can't see because the light's shining through and he has to take before he takes the helmet off. And we should put like pictures of women of that time in the background. Just like
Well, Matt, did you catch in this? Speaking of references, did you catch that Batman's grandma made a reference to the movie The Dark Knight?
no, will you tell me what it is, Bob?
Just that bit about the hero Gotham deserves.
Oh, the Hero Gotham Reserves. Yeah. I completely saw past that. I did get the Ace Chemical reference though, Bob. Apparently, Richard Wayne is responsible for creating the Joker. Technically.
Yeah. So explain that reference to the listeners, Matt.
Yeah, apparently the whole Wayne chemical thing doesn't work out too well, so they end up selling it to a different company, and then Ace takes over.
And then that becomes the source of at least the Joker. And
Yeah,
maybe a
the
couple
Joker,
of other
the
Batman
Joker
villains.
falling into the vat of chemicals, turning. So there's that, and then also Bob Slam Bradley was supposed to be a mentor for young Thomas Wayne, and he didn't do that. So Thomas got his ass handed to him in an alley, which led to Batman.
Well, can I tell you one other connection I just now made, Matt?
What?
So in the notes, as a shorthand, I just put the Ace reference.
Mm-hmm.
And initially looking at my note, I didn't remember what I meant by that. I didn't remember that I meant Ace Chemicals.
Oh.
And I was like, is there an Ace the Bat Hound reference?
Oh,
in this
Ace the
comic?
Bat Hound. Huh.
And then I realized, Batman named his dog after the chemical company
What?
Joker was created at.
That's
Like,
really
that's wild,
weird,
isn't it?
Bob. What?
It's
That
really
can't be.
weird.
That can't be true. That's so weird.
Well, I don't think the comics have ever been aware of it. I don't think that's an intentional thing, but think about it. Like when one of us does our Batman run, Matt, we have to explore why Ace the Bat Hound is named after an Ace Chemical Corporation.
Dang. Scott Snyder needs to get on that.
yeah. Yeah, Tom King is setting up a gift for Scott Snyder
Yeah.
there. Yes, that's the new revelation I just had as I was misreading my own notes.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think this is an appropriate summary to this comic, which I like a lot actually, and to our rather random discussion of this comic that I think does do some really interesting things with racism, corruption, class divide, etc. But when Batman's talking to Slam in the epilogue, Slam's an old man who's dying, and he's like, basically, Batman asks something of like, "What does it mean?" And Slam's just like, "It doesn't mean anything. It's just something that happened a long time ago."
Yeah. Do you think Slam's a reliable narrator, Bob? Do you think he's just trying to like make himself sound better before he dies? Like maybe he really was a racist asshole, and he's trying to make it sound like
And
he's the
and
this
so
is his,
in these woke times, he's trying to get cultural capital by pretending to be African American or
this
part
is his
African
this is his
American.
deathbed like revisionist history of himself.
I sort of like that interpretation, Matt. But the one thing I would say that kind of mitigates against it is he does know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. So
Yeah.
how would he know that if the story isn't largely true? Although you do raise up a good point that he well could be presenting it in such a way to make his own role more sympathetic.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's some kind of how I feel after reading it. I'm like, because when you brought up the point that the first Detective Comics issue had him in it being racist towards Chinese people, I'm like, huh. So you're right. Tom King is trying to turn him into a character that's more acceptable for this generation of people. But then like, is it or is it just he's just not a very good narrator, and he's just like he's trying to convince Batman that he's really not the bad guy and that he helped make Batman who he is.
Yeah, but then it must somewhat be true though because he knows
Oh yeah, I mean he knows some of it. So I
Yeah,
think it's. I mean I think these things happened. I just don't think he was like you're
they
saying he
might not
wasn't
have
as
happened this way.
the way that he's involved. Yeah. All right, Bob.
All
So
right,
let's talk
Matt,
about
where
ranking
do you want
this.
to rank this? Yeah.
All right, Bob. I'm gonna
Just
make
to
us.
give the
Uh,
should I run down like
yeah,
highlights
yeah,
of the list right
yeah.
quick?
Go right
Okay,
ahead.
so
Yeah.
just to orient the listeners, so far we got a 12-item list. We've got the 12 apostles of comics here. At number 1, we have the John Hickman, Steve Epting Fantastic Four run. At number 12, we have the AJ Lieberman, Al Baranudo, Gotham Knights Hush Returns arc. Sitting at number 6, we have Batman Hush by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee. I don't really like that being there, but it's kind of high. Sitting at 7, we have Batman Broken City by Brian Azzarello, Eduardo Riso. And sitting at number 8, we have Suicide Squad Get Joker by Brian Azzarello and Alex Maleev. Matt, on this 12-item list, where would you want to put Gotham Year 1?
I want to put Gotham Year One after Batman Broken City.
I'm shocked by that, Matt. You think Batman Broken City, which you do not like and hate, is better than this?
I think for a hard-nosed detective story set in a noir thing like this, that Broken City was better than Gotham Year One.
Wow. Okay, so you think it's better than Noir, but do you in general like setting aside where it should go in ranking, just because you hate Broken City, do you hate this comic?
I don't hate this comic. No, I think it's a little strange. I don't like you think I hate Broken City. The story's not that bad. It's just like it's if listeners, if you've not listened to our coverage of Hush and Broken City, go back because you need to understand that my hatred towards Broken City primarily comes to where it falls in your like chronology. Like it happened in '04 immediately after Hush. Had it happened in like '07, I probably would not care. like, but because it happened immediately after Hush and it ruined anything I was doing with Batman at that time, that is why I do not like it. I would put it as number 8. I put Gotham Year One though after it because the story wise, I think Broken City's a better story for that hard nosed detective thing that you love so
for
much.
for yeah, for me, I would say I would put this at number 5 after Batman City of Madness and above the Paul Dini Detective Comics run. I do think Batman City of Madness is maybe a little better done. This is my second time through Gotham City Year One, and I like it, but I don't like it quite as intensely as I liked it the first time I read it. But I do still
Okay.
like it a lot. But I think I've only gone through City of Madness once, but I think City of Madness hangs together slightly better than Gotham City Year One. And I would argue that even though I'm fond of the Paul Dini, Destin Wynn Detective Comics run at number 5, even though I'm fond of it, I think it's a little bit all over the place. There's a lot of art changes, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that I think Gotham City Year One has a cohesiveness that the Dini and Dustin Wynn run kind of lacks on Detective Comics. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And then with the placement of Hush, I mean, if you had your way, Hush would be at the bottom, so that does make sense. Um, I
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would put Hush below Hush Returns or above Hush Returns. It would definitely either be above or below, but I'm not sure. I'm
Oh.
not sure. I'm not sure where. So should we? So if I'm saying 5 and you're saying 8,
8.
should we just flip a coin, or should we just compromise?
I mean, we could meet in the middle and put it between Hush and Broken City as the new number 7.
Putting it below. That doesn't feel like a compromise to me because
Oh.
I hate Hush. Can we just flip a coin?
Yeah, I can flip a coin. That's fine. Flip a coin. Because I've got my justification for it. You've got yours. So either way, I mean, we're going to be justified where we put it. All right. Flip a coin, Bob.
All right. I'll call Tails.
All right.
Oh, I thought you were flipping the coin.
I don't have a coin.
All right. I'll go.
This is great radio.
Great radio. Great radio. I'll go get a coin. I'll be right back.
All right.
So I have a Canadian coin here. I honestly can't tell you what type of Canadian coin it is because it is so dusty that I cannot read it.
Well, can you identify which side is a head and a tail, Bob? That's the real problem.
Yes, I can identify a head and a tail. It is not so dusty that I cannot not identify it. So I can.
Okay.
Identify it.
All right, Bob.
So, do you wanna call?
Yeah, you called tails, so I'm calling heads.
All right, you're calling. Up the cat's obstructing my throw. Move, cat. God damn it. Okay, I flipped it. It's heads. So you get your wish, Matt, which is to put it at number 8, right below Batman Broken City.
You got it, Bob.
Which on one hand I'm a little bitter at, but on the other hand, I like that it made you say nice things about Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso's Broken City. So
That's what it boils down to, Bob, because I can't beat down on Broken City as that hard-nosed piece and then say this is better, because I can't. Because honestly, Azzarello does what the intent is. It's just not my favorite type of Batman.
And I would say in general, I vastly prefer Brian Azzarello as a writer to Tom King. But if I were going to say one nice thing about Tom King as opposed to Brian Azzarello, even though I do like Tom King, I would say that Tom King, a more versatile writer than Brian Azzarello. I think you do have to give Tom King that.
Oh, yes, for sure. Because this Gotham Year One compared to what he does with Catwoman, Batman, or City of Bane, they're not alike. They're so different
Yeah.
in style.
My man strikes a lot of different tones.
Yeah. Not style, tone. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, thank you for indulging me and reading Gotham City Year One. We'll probably be back in a week or two with another extra comic in addition to our coverage of Mark Waid Fantastic Four. This is Uncanny Treks. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.